Is Redweek, the behemoth in the timeshare resale and rental business, failing timeshare owners with shady tactics? Let's talk about it right after this. Hello and welcome to Destination Timeshare. I'm Jeremy, your host for today. What exactly could I be talking about with Redweek failing timeshare owners? If you don't already know what Redweek is, it's an online marketplace to allow owners to list their timeshare for sale or rent. It then allows buyers or renters to connect with these owners to purchase or rent the timeshare from the owner. It's been around for an awfully long time in the timeshare industry and was recently actually bought out by a larger conglomerate. You pay a small annual membership fee, and as an owner, you can list your timeshare for sale or rent for additional listing fees. Renters and buyers also need to be members in order to contact owners. The issue we're talking about today is around timeshare rentals. Since its existence, Redweek has allowed owners to list their timeshares for rent as DIY or do-it-yourself. This allowed the owner to put their timeshare reservation up for rent for a small fee. Recently, that fee was about $40. A renter would contact the owner, and between the two would come up with an agreed-upon price. Many owners would utilize their own contract, and once details are finalized, the renter would pay the owner, and the deal was kind of done. Redweek later started providing additional services like Verified. For a small additional fee of $10, they would verify the rental listing. This meant that the owner provided Redweek with the timeshare reservation confirmation, and Redweek would verify that the owner really had the reservation and then flag the listing on their website as verified. This provided some additional comfort to renters that the owner was renting a reservation that they actually had. It was to help show renters that they weren't going to get scammed. Now, rental scams were never really a big issue with Redweek since they required an additional fee, a membership fee essentially, to kind of sign up and utilize the website. And scammers, they usually don't like to pay money up front to try and scam people. Anyway, things like this went on for a little while, but Redweek would also move into what they called full service rentals. Full service was a program where an owner would list their week for rent and Redweek would take it over from there. Renters would communicate through Redweek, and once Redweek found a renter, they would charge the owner an additional fee, and also the renter a booking fee of about 10% of the rental listing price. The booking fee would cover credit card merchant fees, as well as provide Redweek with additional profit in addition to the listing fees paid by the owner. Redweek has also made a lot of changes to how listings would appear on the website. They would prioritize full service listings at the very top of the results and put all of the DIY listings down at the bottom of the search results by default. It would require the renters to have to manually change the sort order to easily locate those DIY listings, or they'd have to scroll all the way to the bottom. If you know anything about how Google search works, people don't usually scroll very far before they click on something to see what it's all about. This resulted in DIY listings not renting or not renting as quickly. That was, of course, another owner-unfriendly change. Another thing that a lot of owners considered a drawback of the protected arrangement for owners is that they wouldn't be paid for the rental until the guest checked in. Thus, the guest money was protected. If they happened to try and check in and there was no reservation, they could effectively get their money back from Redweek. But owners, of course, didn't like this because they're not getting paid up front. And there's always the risk there that later on, the guest could maybe do a chargeback. They could complain to Redweek about something with the listing, and the owner might actually be out of luck. Their week is gone, and maybe Redweek doesn't actually give them the money. So I do understand those situations were actually pretty rare, except kind of back during the pandemic. Back then, Redweek actually refunded a lot of renters when they simply refused or couldn't or didn't want to travel, even though resorts were open and operational. Some owners also didn't like this arrangement because it would add additional fees to their rental, as Redweek also charged a $99 finder's fee, and it also inflated the total cost of their rentals because Redweek would charge the booking fee to the renter. It also meant they couldn't reimburse themselves or pay maintenance fees for the week that they had rented out. They had to effectively float the money for their maintenance fees until after the guest checked in and Redweek paid them. I'm sure that Redweek was also earning interest on the money that they were holding for that period of time, potentially for many, many months. So many owners continued to use Redweek's do-it-yourself or DIY service. They paid a single listing fee of about $40, and their listing would stay active for 6 months. In many cases, if the week rented, they could also reuse that listing for another rental by simply changing the dates on their listing. However, that all changed a couple of months ago when Redweek completely, and I mean completely, removed the DIY rental option. And now the only option for owners to rent as DIY is called DIY Verified and Protected for $50 plus the $99 additional fee when rented. Since it's now protected, that means payments by the renter are made through the Redweek payment system. Redweek will collect the 10% booking fee and also not pay the owner until the guest checks in. They're effectively forcing owners into a near full service kind of arrangement while still calling it DIY for some reason. I guess the only real difference here between DIY, Verified and Protected, and full service is essentially that communication between the renter and owner. With DIY, it's still they are communicating between each other. Full service, you kind of have Redweek in the middle of the conversation. Redweek still offers a full service option for $60 plus that $99 finder's fee. All the same rules still exist. Owners just don't have to deal with communications with the renter directly. Owners no longer have the option to use their own contract. They can no longer collect payment up front. They are bound to the terms of the Redweek rental contract, and they have to wait until the guest checks in order to get paid for their rental. It also drives up the cost of their rentals for guests. Since the renter has to pay the additional 10% booking fee, many owners who previously used DIY listings are simply not too happy about these changes. Now, if all that isn't bad enough for owners, we're now hearing some reports of canceled reservations where the owner is out their revenue and it may be Redweek's fault. Here's how I understand what is happening. An owner lists their timeshare for rent. A renter finds the listing and books it. They book it directly through Redweek. When they do this, they pay for it up front to Redweek, but it still has to be confirmed by the owner. Redweek contacts the owner and requests that they put the reservation in the name of the guests so they can finalize the rental. When this is done, Redweek is then responsible to confirm the finalized reservation with the rental guest. The problem seems to be that the renter has the option to cancel the rental up until Redweek sends them the actual confirmation. So if Redweek is slow and the renter gets impatient, they may cancel and Redweek goes back to the owner to tell them it has to be canceled. Many owners rent their timeshares with strict no cancellation policies, but these cancellation policies don't go into effect until the reservation is fully confirmed with the renter. This has unfortunately left some owners holding the bag when these types of situations happen close to check-in. Now the owner may be sitting on a reservation they can't cancel or change and would get limited utility if they had to deposit it with a timeshare exchange company. This is certainly an unfriendly policy, as Redweek seems to be prioritizing renters over owners. Though truth be told, the renters are Redweek's main customers. Without them, Redweek would not have a business, and it seems they want to make the renters happy. So what other options do owners have? Well, there aren't many. There are some, but it doesn't help that Redweek seems to have the biggest chunk of the timeshare rental market share. They advertise heavily on Facebook and on Google and are able to bring in a lot of potential renters. It makes them by far one of the easiest ways for owners to rent their timeshare. Redweek knows this, so they can kind of strong arm owners with these kind of heavy-handed tactics. Owners still have a few options for true DIY listings, but they may not have the same reach as Redweek. As an owner, sites like Tug Marketplace and Facebook Marketplace are great places to list your timeshare week for rent. There's also a new site I've never heard of before called Finding Melee, which seems to have a similar business model as Redweek, but maybe with slightly lower fees. Also, don't forget about My Resort Network. Yes, it is in fact still out there. I'm curious, are you an owner who rents through Redweek? What are your thoughts on some of these changes? Do you usually rent with DIY listings, or have you moved on to submission and are using Redweek full service rental listings? I'd love to hear your thoughts all about it down in the comments below. Also, if you liked this video and found it helpful, or maybe even if you didn't, click that thumbs up button down below. And if you want to see another video about renting and how Marriott Vacation Club has been making changes to how owners add rental guests to reservations, check out this video right here coming up next. Thanks for watching, and remember, until next time, the best destination is always a timeshare.